as I sit here and type away, it is time to turn the camera on. Yay. And welcome. Wow, that's like really, really red. I'm not that red. That's why I've got Logitech webcam. And that's why we click this little button right here. And that's still too red. There we go, that's a little bit better. Now I'm yellow. What if we drop the color intensity a little bit? That's a bit more. Yeah, that's better. Go figure. Anyway, some of you may know that I've had issues this week with my printer. The print's coming off my printer. To be exact, I've had issues. Oh! Everyone say hello to Carlton. He decided he wanted to come up and join me just now. Do you mind? Do you mind? Come on. Carlton? You can tell this is Carlton because he has no collar. Yeah. Why are you burying your head in my elbow? Fuzzbutt. Ugh. Yes, this cat loves his daddy. As if you couldn't tell. I gotta put you down. Because I was trying to talk. Go on. Now, anyway, like I was saying, the little halfling we made back on Tuesday. I'm gonna zoom in. So I'm going to go blurry for a moment. I don't like autofocus. It almost never works. Alright. Oh, that's way too far. I have to get... And... yeah, here we go. This is the successful print. Let's see what happens if I... a little bit more light from the front. Yeah. This is the successful print. I still have a little bit of cleanup to do on the back. And it's still a little shiny, so I'm not quite as perfect as I was hoping. But it came out a lot better. This is the failed print, and you'll notice that it's also got a chunk taken out of the sword. From the front it looks alright except for the sword, but the back is slimy and it's missing almost all of the details on the back, and what details are there are blurred and indistinct. Yeah, turns out I had my exposure per layer up too high, so that the layer above was getting some of the resin around it also cured. Yay. Dropped the resolution time, dropped the exposure time down a bit, and I got better results. And yeah. Okay. So... tonight is time for just a regular old sculpt night, and as such I'm going to go ahead and pull up, for the sake of everyone who's aware of it, bing bing bing, with the paladin recently added. Like I said, we got a ways to go before we can catch up with gnomes and halflings to where humans, elves, and dwarves are. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with a gnome, and I say, let's make a Gnome Barbarian tonight. I mean, think about it, Gnome Barbarian, yeah. I mean, last gnome we made was pretty, cliche almost, a Gnome Bard. I mean, Gnome Bard, Gnome Illusionist, pretty cliche right there. but a Gnome Barbarian. Roar! Well, it's 8:03. I'm going to give people just a couple more minutes to start showing up and saying hi. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch on the recorded, hey, if it's YouTube, thanks and subscribe. Say and like and all that other nonsense. And all that other nonsense, yeah. But for right now, it's just gonna be. I'm gonna be basically just talking out ideas. Okay, a Gnome Barbarian. Yeah, he's averaging. Let's see, according to the player's handbook, 2'11" plus 2d4 inches tall. That would be. Let's make him on an average roll. 2d4 would be 7. No, it would be 5. Sorry. 2.5 plus 2.5. 5. 5 plus 11. 16 minus 12. 3 foot 4 inches tall. And 40 pounds on average. So, yeah, they're short. What would they use as their primary weapon? A whole lot of short, scrabbly little barbaric gnomes. Well, I'd like to think that they'd have something a bit more... Oh, that's it. A hammer with a pick head on the back. And he'd probably be shouting out a battle cry and that sort of thing. So we're going to switch to Bing over here. And we have my figure. Now, I've had people ask me in the recent past how I got this all set up. The answer is, I made this geometry in 3D Studio Max. And for those who know topology, the topology is not great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. Especially, the eyes aren't that great. The topology here. The ears are horrible. And yeah. I've got just mediocre in most places. And then once I had it made, I took it into DAZ Studio, which is this program, and I rigged it, which means I click on an arm and I can make it go front, back, all that whole nonsense of rigging. And by using DAZ Studio's features for morphing or blend shapes, I can make it change shape. And because of how it does it, you can see the bone structure here. Now watch the bone structure when I turn it into a deep one. The bones change to fit. It doesn't leave them behind. Dragonborn goes up a bit. The Dry Undead, it doesn't really move any because he's just shrinking into a corpse-like shape. But what we're doing tonight is a lot smaller with a lot bigger ears. The gnome with his big nose, big ears, not quite as chunky build as a halfling, and not quite as broad as a dwarf. That is today's critter. So, I guess what we're going to start with is we're going to go ahead and give him his equipment. First, his hammer. Let me scroll down. Now, some of you have access to these files here, but I'll tell you right now, not all of the weapons that I have on this page are in these files. Okay, Horseman's hammer. right hand. A hammer with a pick on the back. And then because he's a barbarian, he's going to have some kind of kilt or skirt or something. That. Now we go back here and we go to Gnome and we shrink him down 100%. Now before I make his pose, I'm going to pose his head. In this case, it means I'm going to be posing his brows, and his mouth. Now, see what happens if we Y-rotate. Bring it out a bit. Make it a little bit more. There, he looks a bit angry, doesn't he? Angry gnome! Oh no! Oh yes, there's an angry gnome. So now we want to obey some of the rules that I've made in the past, which means that let's hide the skirt because it makes it hard to select some pieces. The hips cannot be parallel to the ground at any time, nor can the shoulders be parallel to the hips. Okay, the hips went back 7.5, so they're going to go -8. Let's bend them forward a bit more, and side to side them a little bit, and then bend leg. Then we're going to take this one, we're going to bring it in from the side to side, and we're going to bend the calf back a bit more. Then we're going to select both feet by holding down Control, go to front view and select and zoom in on them. What we're going to do is we're going to take this foot, we're going to bend it until it's mostly flat, and then side to side it a little bit. Wrong way. Okay, we need to go this way until it's as flat as we can make it, and we need to go there. That's about as flat as we can make that foot. Now, if we bend the toe, we can see that we're going to have to make this foot, we're going to make this bend a lot more. We want the toe to come up because he's got big feet. Okay, we're going to twist the calf a little, not a lot because we want to keep some of the direction, and then we're going to twist the toe and unbend it a bit until it's, yeah, there we go. And then we're going to side to side the chest, bend it back a bit, and we're going to side to side the abdomen a little. Okay, and we're going to bend the abdomen forward just a little bit. He's like, "Yeah, thrusting that chest forward because I'm a tough guy." We're then going to raise the arm here and twist it a bit like that. Okay. And we're going to take this, we're going to slide it down some in his hand. No, that's too much. It's going to poke through where his hair is. No, I know. Let's solve that by instead deciding the hand just a little bit so we can bring the hammer down a bit more, because we want it kind of near the top of that. Okay. Now we're going to take this shoulder, and we're also going to bend it up a little. We're going to bring it back a bit though. We're going to twist this arm, bend it forward and twist it. Twist. No, let's twist the shoulder. Yeah, there we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to bend the hand back a bit. And then the fingers, we're going to bend them forward a bit. Then the rest of the hand gesture will come from the thumb, as I scratch the back of my head. So that's going to be out. Okay. Normally I wouldn't recommend bending side-to-siding the thumb, but the thumb has a kind of an odd joint in it, so this makes it easier. Yeah, here we go. He's ready to go charging down the battlefield with his hammer. I got a better idea. Let's take this hand. We're gonna bend it forward some and twist the arm, the upper arm, a little bit more. Okay. Barbarian gnome on his way to charge to rampage through the tall folk villages. Yeah, go figure. So now we're going to hide the hammer in the tunic bottom, and this is our little gnome. And we're going to export him. Export as no bar body. I was missaving that one. Export. No, barb, B, not D. And then we're going to have the axe. File, export. No barb axe. Well, it's not like the hammer, but bleh. And then file, export. No barb kilt. Accept. Okay. Alright. Closing through some things. And excuse me. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring it into ZBrush, which, as you can see right now, just has a star. But that star is going to become the gnome body. Boo! Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to append a subtool. Polymesh. And this polymesh is going to be replaced with his kilt. And then we're going to append another subtool. And this one will be replaced with his axe, or his hammer. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to subdivide the hammer a couple times until it's nice and smooth, because we're going to do a little detailing on the big walls of the hammer. Then we're going to take the kilt, we're going to subdivide it a couple times. And we're going to go to the gnome and we're going to hide these. So that way we can do some work on tweaking the basic shape before we actually get into worrying about anything else. And we do this with the tablet. It's Wacom, it's white, yes. And yes, I made this and I use it. A Green Lantern power battery as my stylus holder. You can, with 3D printing, if you can make or imagine the shape, you can make a stylus holder, pen holder, any kind of office thing to use on your desk, and just print it. Just whatever you want to do. Just something like that stylus holder, you can't sell. There's no way that I could make a profit on this without having Warner Brothers coming down my door with 1,400 ultra-high paid 1,400 high-paid lawyers going, "You gonna pay for that, son? We got a lawsuit here for you." Yeah. So, first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and, since I'm gonna be going back and forth, I'm gonna put stroke over here and turn off lazy mouse. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth out here very carefully. Shrink the mouse and smooth out under the arm. The same thing's going to happen over here. You see, when I made this figure at the first time, I sort of didn't make some of the geometry rig perfectly. I'll eventually get around to making a better, especially better back geometry. But for right now, I have to tweak it every time I bring it in for anything other than a normal . And so I'm working so low, I gotta work on the... Yeah. And then... I'm going to have to do some further smoothing when it comes time, because this is just some basic shape smoothing. And we're going to have to tweak this sharp arm bit there a little. Alright. And then we got to tweak inside this mouth. Okay, And what this does, this helps us not have a huge gap to have to paint or have to print. Okay, now we're going to subdivide it. 1, 2, 3. 1.4 million. That's good enough to start. And actually, that's right. I forgot one other thing we got to fix. On the tips of my biceps is a peak right along here that we need to soften. Now he's going to be wearing a kilt and no shirt, but he might wear the throw over of a kilt, the great kilt part. No! 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 Right onto the tablet. Alright, let's make this a little bit bigger because I can see I still need to... Whoa! I still need to make the lats here a bit more even. That's going to help us later. Okay, now we're going to bring those subdivisions up and we're going to dynamesh them because we want to have I'm going to have to undo that. I forgot to delete subdivisions. That's why it's yellow over there. Escape. And we just may have crashed ZBrush. And yeah, we just crashed ZBrush. Yay! And hello, Blender Stream. It's the most recent version of ZBrush, actually. But I just tried canceling in the middle of something, and I'm going to have to do everything I just did all over again. Yes! No. Yay. But welcome to the channel. Ain't it fun when you crash a high-end program? And no, I don't have an SSD. That's why it's taking so long for this to load. Let's see if it's in the quick save tab. Do I have anything in there? Well, no, I don't. Yay. So, I import Gnome Barbarian body and start this all over again. Yay. And I append polymesh, import the kilt, append polymesh, and import the hammer, even though I named it an axe. Okay, geometry. Subdivide it a couple times until it's fancy so I can later go back in and sculpt in some detailing on it. Let's make this subdivide it a couple times just because. I'll explain later. And now him with the visible. Let's take care of what we can take care of before we subdivide him. Stroke over. Stroke over. Lazy mouse. Hide. Shrink. Power down. And now we're going to power down smoothing a bit. I'm gonna smooth that out. We're going to smooth that just a bit. Just kind of dig in. And that right there. Let's bring that straight. Smooth that underarm part right there. And then we're going to give him lats that I don't have in the base geometry. Okay. And then do the same on this side. And it's I'm also gonna add in some more accurate shapes on here. Okay. And then we're going to zoom into the mouth and shrink this and close it. Well, let's bring that up all the way and let's smooth out the inner mouth so that it becomes not so likely to cause a problem when we go to print. And while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and go to inflate. This is a brutish, barbaric gnome. So he's probably got slightly larger than normal, or thicker than normal, brows. Barbarian gnome. Angry barbarian gnome. Frame. Okay, for the most part we're done with this. We're going to go ahead. We're going to go to geometry. We're going to subdivide it. 1 point. Oh, lower res. Delete higher. Delete lower. And now we're going to dynamesh it. Actually, we're going to, before we dynamesh it, we're going to make the kilt visible. We're going to merge down. Wait, cancel. Let's do what we can to smooth out the bottom of the kilt, make it easier to blend in when it comes time. Move topological, make it bigger, and drag. Oh, make it a lot bigger, and drag it in to the belly a bit. Almost everything else should. Oh no, this needs to come in. Okay, and right there needs to come in a little bit. And right here needs to come in a little bit. Okay. And now we frame it so it's back in the frame. And we're going to merge down. Okay, now we're going to dynamesh at 768, blur of 0, dynamesh. It's all one thing now. And if we zoom in, we can see that. So we shrink the mouse, bring the smooth back. Okay, smooth is still 100%, and we're going to blend over the seam. until it's very clear that it's now looking like one piece. This helps. We're going to make our belt for the kilt or whatever this is going to end up being directly on the waist of the gnome. So yeah, actually right now we really should be doing it with this so we make sure we're getting 100% every time. Yeah. Now the reason, normally you're almost always told, never add detail at the highest level of resolution. The only reason I do it like this, is because most of what I'm going to be adding is going to be additional cloth items, and I really want the polygon there to support adding belts and straps and bracers and things like that. Yes, Blenderstream, I normally do. I haven't. It happened when I didn't have the opportunity. Also, saving every 15 minutes is not a good thing because I spend more time saving and loading. Every half hour or so, yeah. Let's smooth out some of these areas here. Skin doesn't always wrinkle up like that. And then on the back here. Okay, now the first thing that we're going to do before we get into making, detailing his musculature and that, is we're going to make his belt. Then we're going to add some detail to his kilt. Okay. Let's go ahead and make it a nice broad belt. Oh. Before I do that, I need to move the focal shift around and draw on a mask. This mask will become his belt because we're going to be using the extract. Okay. Now we go back up here to Subtool. We go to Extract. And I want to extract it at 0.03. I may be using an Anycubic photon to print now. But there's still quite a few people who print using a FDM printer, like a CR10 or an Ender 3 or a Prusa. Alright, and we're going to Dynamesh it at 256. The reason I chose that is because it's at the scale that I'm working, I've noticed that it tends to give decently sharp edges while still giving me enough room to work. Okay, so we've got our basic belt. We're going to shrink the mouse a bit, and we're going to kind of go in here where it's kind of smooth, and we're going to hit, or where it's kind of bent, we hit smooth, and you'll notice that it actually pulls the wrinkle out from the center of the belt. Am I being I'm being pestered by another cat. Yeah. At least she didn't incapacitate me. What is the matter with you right now, Fuzzbutt? Okay, get on down. Go. Yes, I said incapacitated. Alright. Any other... I'm not gonna worry about the kind of shallow bends that are on the side. I was just worried about that darker bend in the center. The shallow bend will actually help people who dry brush. Okay. Now, I'm now going to subdivide it. The reason for this is because I'm going to be creating a buckle based on this. So, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to shrink down the mouse. That should be good. And I'm basically going to draw on where the buckle is. And then I'm going to orient it a little bit and use Control Alt to kind of whoa. Oh, that's right. I can't. I can only brush it on. So shrink it a bit. The reason we're shrinking it is because after we make this, we're going to be inflating it. The reason for that is it will make it look more like a round metal buckle and less like a inflated part of the belt. And okay. Now we're going to extract this at 0.02. Accept. Now for the geometry, we're going to dynamesh it at 128 because we want this to be round. And now we're going to smooth out the whole thing. Oh. Now, inflate. We're going to inflate it here. Come down. Now we're going to use move topological, but not until after we've given at least one subdivision level, so I can read this tighter. We're going to move the focal shift over. We're going to kind of sharpen the inner edge of these four corners here. Okay, you're back. Come on. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, and now I'm going over to deformation. I'm just going to inflate the whole thing at once. Whoop. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to subdivide it just to make it smooth for when we blend everything together. Delete lower. Frame. Okay. Now we go back up here to the body, and we're going to start adding on just some basic wrinkles onto the kilt. Well, I'm not going to call it a kilt because it's really, it doesn't have pleats, it doesn't have the great kilt part. It's, anyways, he add 13. smooth that out a bit, because we're going to erase the edges of it, because that wasn't too good. Now that's just basic shapes. This is not wrinkles. Wrinkles happen when you make them a bit sharper, because that's what happens with cloth. It folds in sharp lines. Now what I'm doing isn't exactly realistic here. What I'm doing is impressionistic more. And then, like, what we're going to do here, we're going to draw on the under third of each of these wrinkles with this sharper slash brush. This isn't to make the wrinkles more realistic, it's to make them more functional as a paintable miniature. There's two primary ways people paint clothing. Well, the average painter. Masterclass painters have multiple different ways, but the average person either gives it a wash of an ink or watered down paint, or they dry brush. And so for that, we've got two different things. We've got the ridges here that I'm making that will catch a dry brush and deposit the pigment on the top of the wrinkle. And now, for the washes, I'm cutting under the wrinkle with a bit of a sharper bottom edge. And that's going to catch the paint of a wash. And at the ends, occasionally you'll hit with a bit of smoothing. That's because wrinkles tend to not so much start and stop as evolve. Cut under. And then cut under. Oh, this one we need to go a little bit more here and smooth it just a bit and cut under here and cut under there. Okay, that's the basics on what little cloth there's going to be on this guy. And what's this? Okay. Next up we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to give him bracers. And I'm thinking they're going to be two totally different styles of bracer. It's like the right hand is holding the weapon, so he's probably just going to get a couple arm rings. The left hand, well, as you can see, it's open and snarly, growly, mean. It's going to have a big old bracer. He's probably going to be from the same tribe as my dwarf in heavy armor that I did a while back. So he's going to have a full arm bracer. And we're going to draw this on. We're going to make it separately from the other, just so that, because the other arm we're going to end up making, rounded armbands. And actually, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll come all the way down here. And yeah, that's looking good. Let's come this way, not quite so curved. And what we're going to do, we're going to extract it at 0.3, which is what it's set at. So extract, accept, draw. And I draw back on the body because that masking is still there. If I tried to do another body part, I'd end up with a duplicate. The fact that we don't have a duplicate of the belt means that I did that back then too. Now I'm going to focus on this bracer, and I'm going to Dynamesh it at 256. Dynamesh. Now I'm going to subdivide it a couple times because of what I've got to do for detailing on it. Okay. Now, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a decent, deep, large slash from here and from here around to there. The reason for this is for the same reason. I'm going to shrink the mouse and give it a little bit less, and then kind of draw it near the middle of that curve. I'm then going to shrink the mouse a bit and smooth where the elbow part meets this groove so that it looks like the bracer is over the elbow guard. And here, I'm going to smooth this a bit, and then, no, not, it didn't come out well. Alright, we're going to tweak this, because this needs to come down. We need to move the focus shift back to 0. And just kind of grab it and drag it down. And now we're going to smooth this. And this. Now we're going to frame it again, and we're going to kind of grab this and move it down just to try and even it out. Okay, now we're going to shrink this, and we're going to select there, and going to kind of erase the underside as best as we can. I'm going to have to hide the body so I can get into here. Okay. And we're going to extract this at 0.02. Accept. Draw that in. Select the bracer, draw that in. Geometry, Dynamesh 120, no, at 256 because we want it moderately sharp. And subdivide it. Then we're going to use the move topological, make it bigger. And we're going to drag it into there. And that one really needs it, so we're going to grab it and drag it into there. Okay. Now we're going to select our thingy there again. Yes, thingy, that's a very technical term for armor. You didn't know? Yeah. And I'm going to shrink this so it's about the size of that. And we're going to draw on the trim for the bracer. The back trim is actually going to end up being bigger than the front trim. Actually, there may not even be any front trim. Alright, now, hide this guy. Let's turn these off, just because we don't need them right now. We're going to shrink the mouse quite a bit to make it have a bit more control over what we're doing with the trim here. And we're gonna okay, there we go, and then and the reason for this is we don't want the trim for this to fold over too much. It will fold over. There's really not going to be anywhere we're going to prevent it because, you know, precision levels are just... I'd have to sit here for literally hours, if not days, getting it down to the exact polygon and vertex. And this is only about an hour and a half, 2 hour show. So, oh. Alright, we're going to extract it now, accept, draw. And now you'll notice it's pretty ragged. I'm going to Dynamesh it and then straighten it up. And the way I'm going to straighten up is with the move tool. Now again, this is something that once it's actually printed is going to be so small that most people aren't going to be able to see it. And it's really going to be not as it might affect paint if you've got an amazing quality printer. But for the most part, it's going to be something that it's just, you're not going to see. So just cleaning it up just a little bit. And we're going to subdivide. Clean up the, so now the bracer looks like this. Turn on him. We're going to have the bracer selected. Now we're going to draw on detailing. I had been using Slash for that, but I've decided to switch to the layer brush. Reason being, the Slash tends to have very, very, almost too subtle of an effect. So, let's increase our lazy radius to, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to draw on swirlies. That's not deep enough and it's not quite large enough. Swirlies are things that are relatively easy to draw. That will show up quite well on a really small print. Okay, and then we're gonna and then here we're just going to draw a big S. Okay, now we're going to frame it. We're going to make the bracer invisible. Oh yeah, we better do that just so that. And now we're going to go to the other arm and make our arm rings and stuff like that. The way we're going to do them is we're going to kind of line them up. And we're going to just draw a rectangle here. Let's make it a little bit wider. And then I want it to be as straight as possible. Okay, now we're going to draw on here. And then we're going to draw a little missing spot here to make it two rings. Now, the thing is, when I extract these, there's a little thing down here called double. I'm not going to do it. What happens is, when I, mask off forearm, and I extract out, it's also extracting inward towards the center of the arm the same amount. By not doing double, the bottom edge, instead of being deep in the skin, is even with the skin. And the end result, it's too big. Right. The end result is going to be more like rings, because I'm going to be smoothing them. So we go to geometry. We're going to be Dynamesh at 128. Oh no, can't do that. Dynamesh at 512, because they're so close it's going to blend. Okay. And then we're going to subdivide them once. We are going to then go to deformation, and we're going to polish them 15 times. No. Polish crisp edges. We're gonna let's see what happens if we relax. Nothing. Okay. Oh well. What we're gonna do one thing is we're gonna inflate them just a little bit. We're gonna use slash, and we're going to separate right up here. The way we're going to do this is first just a little bit of smoothing, and then a little bit of inflation. And I don't want to be like 80s level of inflation. That was pretty bad. I don't know if you remember the 80s. Okay, and then smooth that, smooth that. Anyway, frame out, and we can turn off the rings. Next up is boots. And there's two ways we can do these boots, but I'll tell you after I get this. My throat's dry. Excuse me. Anyway, we can make them cuffed, or we can make them high. Or we can make them mucklucks or whatever. Mucklucks are just a variation on cuffs, but what I'm going to do, I don't normally do this because it makes them look kind of goofy, but I'm going to make the entire foot part of the boot. Okay, and the way this is going to work, it's going to end up making their entire foot a lot larger, which would kind of help balance out the large upper torso he's got so far. So now we're going to extract 0.02. Accept. Draw. Draw. Now we frame out and we zoom out of it. And there's our boots. We're going to go ahead, we're going to Dynamesh at 256 to get us a sharp corner of the top. And we're going to subdivide it a couple times. No, we don't want it at 1.8 million. That's too much. Okay, delete higher, delete lower. And we're going to now draw in some kind of toe wrinkles, just because we kind of, it's something I've been neglecting and I really should be doing. And yes, we're going to be using slash for this, although not as deep and a little bit bigger. And then a bit of smoothing. And add. Okay. And then we're going to do it up here too. Well. Frame. Okay. Now, so far, without any hair or redefined musculature, this is what our gnome looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to pretty much merge everything that's not the gnome and his hammer. And then just to give us a bit more room on this list, because we don't need to do any more work on these. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start carving in some detail work for the musculature. Slash will help us here too. One thing, I'm going to start off by slashing in where those muscles would basically, that's not deep enough, or not large enough. Slashing in where those muscles would be, so that we can then come back in later with the other brushes to make it more extreme. And under here, we're not going to bother with the forearms because they're covered. Okay, and then we're gonna come down this way, and we're gonna come down this way, and we're gonna lighten it a bit, and we're going to draw in our six-pack. Then we're going to draw in the serratus muscles. And under the pectorals a bit. Now we're going to inflate. And one of the things, actually no, we're going to go to standard first. So what we need to do is we need to bring out this connection on the bicep. Especially over here. and shrink this mouse quite a lot and smooth out this connection. Okay. And then just kind of smooth this out. Then we're going to inflate. Make this bigger and shrink it a little. Alright, shrink it, make it a little bit lighter. Then we're going to go ahead and add in the various other muscles plus the elbow. We're not going to add in the elbow on the other one simply because it's covered by the arm cup. Okay. Gonna make him Gnome Hercules. And we're gonna no. Okay, now we're gonna inflate this and inflate down here. We're gonna inflate down here. And we're gonna inflate coming up this way. Inflate coming down this way, and inflate the center of the deltoid. Actually, before I do that, I need to do a bit of a slashing. And then back to inflate. Let's get this inflated up here. I'm basically trying to get the muscles to looking as decent as I can without being, you know, they don't have to be exact, they've got to be impressionistic. Reality is unrealistic. If you look up, like, you know, TV tropes. You know, it's like hawks. Not hawks, eagles. The cry that we associate with the eagle cry, that high-pitched screech, that's not an eagle. That's a red-tailed hawk. Frame. And now we turn on the clothing. And we're going to have to tweak some of it. To be exact, the armbands. We're going to tweak it with Move Topological and a larger brush than what you're seeing. We're also going to turn on transparency, and not line fill, transparency. Make it easier to see how we have to go. So we're going to grab this, going to bring it out like that. Out like that. Because we want to make sure that, whoop, I didn't want to grab it there. we want to make sure that we're also bringing it out large enough to be a detail to print, not just large enough to... Yeah. So it's down here, we need to grab it and drag it out a little bit. Okay. So there we have his clothing and his muscles. So next up is his hair. And you know what we're going to give him for hair? That's right, he's getting a mohawk. Because doesn't everyone love gnomes with mohawks? So, let's go ahead and get my mouse. We're going to just grab in the center and mask down. Actually, no, let's make it a little bit bigger. Yeah. Down that way. And then kind of down to there, and then we're gonna chop it off there, and then we're going to chop it off in front here. Now how much is it going to be extracted? Let's make it 0.1. Not enough. 0.2. Accept. And here we select the hair, and we're going to Dynamesh at 256. Dynamesh. Then we're going to polish the edges here because it did overlap a little with itself. And we're going to just do a little bit under here. And then what we're going to do, yeah, see, that's a nice big old fro for our barbarian gnome. We are going to, on the subtools, we're going to hide, well, first make sure, yeah, we did. We're going to hide the body and the clothing because we've got to add in a whole lot of large divots and points on top of here, which actually would be best done with a noise map. We use Z sub alpha. Let's see if I can find an appropriate alpha on my no, I don't have a good appropriate alpha. Yeah, forget it. What we'll do is we'll make it this little divots hand drawn. What this is going to do, once again, same as with cloth, people most commonly use washes or dry brushing to catch edges or hollows. This catches both, because as soon as I finish adding in these divots, I'm going to add in a inflate to bring these out more, but only on the tops. And this is probably a detail that will show up best on resin printers, but it's enough to make it rough on an FDM. And see, it doesn't take as long as you think. We're already almost halfway through with this part. And I'm hearing a TV show in the other room about the Invictus games. As a veteran, I would like to say that if there is no other reason, the Invictus games validated the presence of the British royal family in modern society as a royal family. If you're not familiar with it, the Invictus games is for basically wounded warriors. Okay, now inflate. I'm going to make this bigger, inflate more, and just going to burp, 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 burp. Just kind of go over some of these little intersection areas. And the end result will resemble, if you've ever seen any of the old-fashioned troll slayers and war dancers from the 80s and 90s, the tops of their mohawks and faux hawks and other weird pointy hairstyles kind of resembled this. Yeah. Okay, frame out, zoom out, and move down. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw on our hair. And the way we're going to do that is not the usual way. We're actually going to use a rake as a Z-subtract and draw in. Whoop. Before we do this, we need to subdivide it because it's still too low geometry. Whoops. Intensity down quite a lot. And now we turn on the gnome again. And what we're going to do now is inflate it to try and turn those into strands instead of dig-ins. And that should do. And that is our hair for our Gnome Barbarian. Now you may remember I mentioned something about possibly detailing the hammer. And we are going to. So what we're going to do with the hammer, we're going to hide the everything else. Now this hammer, we're going to add in some, let's add some glyphs. We're going to use the layer tool again to do this. And we're going to turn off Lazy Mouse. And then we're going to start with, let's say, a glyph representing teeth. Yeah. And then out again. No. Let's connect it. And then under. Okay, that's our teeth glyph, which is much better than the Heathcliff. Thunder. Let's kind of smooth that out and hollow it out. And then some kind of alien glyph. Now up here on this side, we're going to start off with a dragon glyph. Or wings at least. And then fire. And then again another alien glyph. And then we're going to turn everything visible again as we look at our Gnome Barbarian. Our big old burly Gnome Barbarian. Okay, there is one last thing to add. And that is... Oh yeah, before I get to that, I've got to go here and I've got to tweak the hands. I almost forgot, and that's something I should never forget. So we're going to inflate, because that's how I do most of these. First thing we're doing is we're going inside that thumb and tweaking some of the geo inside that thumb. Until it blends with the finger. And we're going to smooth out just a bit. Okay, now zoom out. Make sure this is the same size as our fingers, and it's not. It's a little bit too small. So now we're going to draw on our knuckle here, 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 and here. And then we're going to draw down the tendons on the backs of the hands. Not everyone has these tendons, but a lot of us do. I'm one. But it adds to the hand. Now we're going to need to place the first knuckle probably about here, and the second knuckle about here. And then as usual, the little bit further ahead on the middle, and a little bit further back on the pinky. It's exaggerated from where it is in reality, but that's okay, because everything else we're doing is too. And then we're going to smooth the spaces between the knuckles. Then we're going to use the slash tool, rather deep, to slash in the separation between the fingers. And if you have to make an error to make the middle finger thicker and the little finger smaller. And there. And that's that hand done. Well, except for a bit over here, yeah. And that hand now makes this hand look pathetic. So we're going up here. And we're going to make this a bit larger and a little bit weaker. We're going to cut in the lines of a palm. And then we're going to very gently smooth it out. And then we're going to shrink it down and go back to inflate. And we're going to add on our knuckles. Draw in our tendons. Smooth out the bottoms. And then we're going to add in our knuckles. And smooth. We're just going to run a line down them because they're mostly straight. And then we're going to go back to slash and dig in these lines. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make it a little bit bigger and cut across the base of the palm here. And then we're also going to cut in our inner fingers. And we're going to smooth it just a little. And cut the space between the fingers. We frame out. Yeah, there we go. I can't believe I almost forgot the hands. Now we're going back to our appended subtool here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a base. But we got to decide what base. I can actually now put this aside. Earlier this morning, I made a whole bunch of new bases. And we can use one of those. Well, I'm thinking a good one to use. Let's see, we've got cobblestone, tech diamond plate, fancy tiles, grasslands, wood planks, rocky ground, and tech panels. Let's use the wood planks because he's going berserk in a pub. Okay, so now that we've got this, the next thing we do is we've got to lower it down so that it's underneath the feet of the guy. We're gonna wide translate it. And we, whoa. And then we go here. And we need to raise it just a little bit. So just enough to blend it in. Yep. And then we're going to make sure that it's... Alright, from this side it looks... It needs to go forward just a little bit. So we're going to offset Z instead of Y. Yeah. And then from the front it's good. So frame out, and this is our miniature. Now what we're going to do, we've got to subdivide this base because it's actually pretty low poly. Delete lower. And now we blend all the subtools by merging down. And we get a visit from a fuzzbutt again. Do you mind, Carlton? You are such a pain, you little furball. Yes? What are you doing? I need to put you on the ground, furball. You okay? Yes, doing his kneading biscuits. I gotta put you on the ground, little buddy. Yep, there you go. And before we can do anything to make it printable, we need to Dynamesh the whole thing together. I do this, and it takes a few moments, and it goes from 2.8 or 2.739 million polygons to 2.518. Not a visible change, but if you zoomed in close, you'd see that it's all fused into one solid frame, one solid mesh. So, now we need to take it down from 2.5 million polygons to closer to 75,000. So, I click this, and we have Decimation Master down here on the side. I'm going to go to 50,000 polygons. No, let's make it 35K. Let's see if we can get 70,000 triangles. And it's looking like it's going. We had some problems with the halfling paladin. And it's looking like we're gonna have no problems at all with our Gnome Barbarian. Funny, you'd think it'd be the other way around. 6, 7, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Cat, go down! And it's reordering, writing file to disk, and it'll be go Z file, and we'll see that we have 70,092 polygons, with almost every single bit of that detail intact. Even the wood grain of the base that will probably be lost on FDM printers. So that is our Gnome Barbarian. We're going to go ahead and we're going to export it to our Gnome Barbarian figure. And there we go. So today was a... Oh, hey, Crazy J! I'm sorry, I was kind of distracted. I had like one person an hour ago in the chat, and it's been quiet. Yeah, the hammer. It's a. I figured I wanted something that was gnomey for this gnomish barbarian. Yeah, I think he came out pretty gnomey. Although he's also probably. I know who he makes me think of. He makes me think of the Ultimate Warrior. Someone needs to take this guy, print him, and paint him like the Ultimate Warrior. Not it. No, because I'm sculpting on him at scale. The figures in Dev Studio here. Let me go ahead and click on this. This is what I started with, by the way. This is where he came from. But just to show you, the figures automatically I import. Let's import. Well, let's start off by importing a bigger guy. Let's say an orc archer. Okay. I imported an orc archer, and that's him at his scale. That base is exactly 25 millimeters. I now import our brand new gnome and translate him over so that he can be seen. And there is our new gnome. As you can see, he is in scale with the orc. The bases are both exactly the same size. So now, I'm going to delete him. I'm going to be doing a render of him here in just a little bit as soon as I get off the broadcast. But yeah, I've been experimenting with some fancier bases, as you can see. I made these this morning. We've got the wooden planks with nails. Yeah, I think I posted them in the Discord. So anyway, let me go ahead and kick back to the base camera. It is 9:47. That was it didn't take quite as long to make that as it took to make our little halfling paladin. I love this resin printer. Once I got the fixes on the back there, yeah. Anyway, so well, I had some issues. I talked about them at the beginning of the show, so for the sake of people who are watching the pre-recorded, I'm not going to say anything about it. But basically, what happened was, I had my exposure time set too long for the new gray resin, which meant that when I printed the original version, I had him laying down like this because he was being printed with a couple other figures. Well, the stuff on the front came out fine, except for, of course, this little chunk taken out of the sword. But the back came out super shiny and super gloopy because it would expose a layer, then it would go up, and then the exposure was slightly larger. It would expose the layer, and the stuff on the layer above was starting to cure, meaning it all kind of blobbed together on the back side, the side that was facing towards the print bed. It also had the result of, well, here he is. this is, whoops, this is a figure of my Dragonborn Druid that I play on Wednesday nights. Yes, he's honking huge. This was the original print. From the front, they look virtually identical. Until you turn it this way. Notice something about this guy's right foot. And then, yeah, had a bit of a mishap on the printing of this version. So the legs and the back also has that shiny problem. It's covering up a lot of the detail, like there's a lot of scales on his back that didn't come out on him. But I discovered what the problem was and fixed it, and now I've got good prints again. Yay! See, I changed resin from the default green to this new gray that gorgeous looks. It's great for showing off the figures. Anyway, it's about time. I'm going to hold up my left hand and I'm going to count down to 1, and when I get to 1 I'm going to end the broadcast, because actually not when I get to 1, when I see the 1 on the screen, because that way, it deals with lag, because there's about 10 seconds lag. So that will be, excuse me, hiccups, 5, 4, a 3, a 2, a 1.